The Awakening of Amenhotep, Part 1. Chapter 1, The Forgotten Artifact. Dr. Amelia Carter had spent her life chasing legends, deciphering forgotten scripts, and unraveling the mysteries of the ancient world. A distinguished archaeologist with a reputation for uncovering history's greatest secrets, she never expected her most extraordinary discovery to happen inside a museum, the very place where history was preserved, not uncovered. The British Museum's Egyptology wing was quiet that evening, the last of the visitors long gone, leaving only Amelia and the dim glow of display lights reflecting off ancient artifacts. She traced a finger along the edge of a dusty crate, recently arrived from a private collection. The museum's records listed its contents as miscellaneous artifacts from an undisclosed excavation near Luxor, a vague and unhelpful description. Her fingers twitched with curiosity as she unfastened the crate's lid and carefully lifted the first object, an aged, ebony box adorned with gold inlays, hieroglyphs meticulously etched into its surface. It was beautiful, regal even, but what caught Amelia's attention was the inscription running along its edges, written in a script she had only ever seen in fragments before. Ancient Egyptian, yes, but not any ordinary inscription. This was a funerary text, but not for the dead. Her pulse quickened. She adjusted her glasses and traced the symbols with her fingertip. The translation formed in her mind as she whispered the words aloud. Here rests Amenhotep, ruler of the forgotten, he who walks between worlds. He who slumbers, not in death, but in waiting. Only the chosen shall unlock the path to his return. A chill ran down her spine. The name Amenhotep was common among pharaohs, but this inscription suggested something more, a reference to the Amenhotep, the legendary lost pharaoh whose very existence had been debated among scholars for centuries. The legend spoke of a pharaoh who defied mortality itself, rumored to have vanished from history rather than perished like his predecessors. His tomb, if it existed, had never been found. His name had been deliberately erased from records, a fate reserved for those condemned by the gods. Amelia reached inside the box and found an ancient amulet, still glimmering despite the passage of time. A carved depiction of the Eye of Ra, set in lapis lazuli, glowed faintly in the dim light. It was more than a relic, it was a key. Heart pounding, she rushed to her desk, clearing away stacks of reference books and maps. She unfurled a papyrus scroll from her personal collection, one she had studied for years, convinced it contained clues to a missing burial site. The symbols on the amulet matched markings on the scroll, confirming what she had suspected for so long. The tomb of Amenhotep was real. The implications were staggering. If the inscription was to be believed, Amenhotep never truly died. What did that mean? Had the pharaoh discovered a way to cheat death? Had he been buried alive, preserved through ancient magic? And more importantly, was he still waiting to be found? A sharp knock at her office door startled her from her thoughts. She turned to find Marcus Graves, her longtime colleague and fellow adventurer, leaning against the frame with a skeptical expression. Amelia, it's nearly midnight. What are you doing? His eyes flicked to the artifact in her hands, and instantly, he recognized her look of pure exhilaration. Oh no. That's the look you had before you dragged me through that cursed temple in Sudan. Amelia grinned, holding up the amulet. This is bigger than Sudan, Marcus. This is what we've been searching for all these years. I think I found the location of the lost tomb of Amenhotep. Marcus sighed, stepping inside. You mean the guy who supposedly disappeared into the sands of time? The one people say never really died? That Amenhotep? Exactly, she said, her excitement undeterred. And I have proof. This amulet is the key, and this inscription, it tells us exactly where to look. A new voice entered the conversation. Elena Vasquez, their expert in ancient languages and field research, poked her head through the doorway, curiosity flickering in her dark eyes. You're telling me you found the pharaoh's lost tomb? And you weren't going to call me? Amelia smirked. I was about to. Elena stepped in, crossing her arms. You know the rumors about him, right? That he was buried alive because of his involvement in the dark arts. That his priests believed he had unlocked the secrets of immortality. Marcus let out a breath. So, if we find this tomb, we're potentially disturbing the slumber of a pharaoh who never died. Great. That's exactly the kind of trip that ends with me being chased by a vengeful mummy. Amelia chuckled. Come on, Marcus. Think of the discovery. This could rewrite everything we know about ancient Egyptian history. Elena studied the inscription, nodding slowly. We need to be careful, Amelia. If what this says is true, the tomb isn't just hidden. It was meant to stay that way. Amelia's eyes gleamed with determination. She had spent her life uncovering lost secrets, and she wasn't about to stop now. Then we better pack our bags, she said, rolling up the scroll. We're going to Egypt. Chapter 2, Journey to the Sands of Time. The golden hues of dawn stretched across the London skyline as Dr. Amelia Carter, Marcus Graves, and Elena Vasquez boarded their flight to Cairo. The museum's halls had barely had time to cool from last night's discoveries, but their decision had been made. They weren't just chasing a legend, they were about to make history. Settled into their seats, Amelia clutched the aged amulet, her fingers tracing the eye of Ra inscribed into its lapis surface. She had read the inscription 100 times, and still, the weight of its meaning pressed against her like the desert heat they would soon step into. Elena leaned closer. You still thinking about the tomb? Amelia nodded. If the legend is true, and Amenhotep was buried in a way unlike any other pharaoh, then his tomb must be hidden deeper than any royal burial site ever found. We'll need to cross-reference this amulet's symbols with known sites near Luxor. Marcus exhaled, rubbing his temples. We haven't even landed, and I can already feel the sand in my boots. Elena smirked. Oh, don't be dramatic, Marcus. This is the kind of adventure you live for. Marcus grumbled but didn't argue. She wasn't wrong. The city of Cairo greeted them with its intoxicating blend of ancient history and modern life. The air was thick with the scent of spices, dust, and the distant Nile. Their first stop was the Cairo Museum, where Amelia had arranged a meeting with Dr. Samir Hassan, an old friend and expert in Egyptian funerary texts. Dr. Hassan met them in his office, the walls lined with scrolls, broken statues, and recovered fragments of long-lost history. His wise eyes lit up as Amelia placed the amulet on his desk. So, you have found something intriguing, Dr. Carter? Hassan mused, adjusting his glasses. Let's see if it is truly worth crossing the sands for. As his fingers brushed the amulet, he froze. His lips parted in silent awe. Where did you find this? Hassan whispered, eyes flicking toward Amelia. It was in a shipment to the museum from a private collector. The inscription speaks of Amenhotep's resting place. Hassan inhaled sharply, tapping the table. Amenhotep's tomb. Do you have any idea what this means? Marcus crossed his arms. We have some idea. The problem is finding it. The map Amelia found suggests the tomb was deliberately concealed. Hassan stood, moving toward a dusty bookshelf. He pulled out an ancient, yellowed scroll, carefully unfurling it. The parchment was covered in hieroglyphs, some faded, others as crisp as if they had been written yesterday. Elena gasped. Is that? A fragment from the Book of Thoth, Hassan confirmed. This passage speaks of a pharaoh, who slumbers beyond time. If this refers to Amenhotep, his tomb may not be where any logical excavation would look. He placed a weathered map before them, pointing to a location south of the Valley of the Kings. There are ruins here, mostly forgotten, buried under shifting sands. They were thought to be part of a lost temple, but I suspect they may lead somewhere deeper. If you truly believe Amenhotep's tomb exists, this is where you must begin your search. Amelia's heart pounded. This was it. The first real clue. Marcus sighed. So, I'm guessing this is the part where we pack our gear and go into the desert? Elena grinned. You do love the desert, Marcus. He scowled. No, I love surviving the desert. There's a difference. Amelia smirked. Then let's make sure we come back alive. We leave at dawn. The sun had barely begun its ascent when the team set off from Luxor, their four-wheel drive kicking up golden plumes of sand. The ruins they sought lay beyond the well-documented Valley of the Kings, in an area few dared to explore due to rumors of shifting sands and disappearances. The journey was arduous, the heat relentless. Miles stretched with nothing but the endless expanse of desert, ancient secrets buried beneath its dunes. Hours passed before, at last, they spotted the crumbling remains of stone pillars, peeking from the sand like skeletal fingers. Hassan, who had insisted on accompanying them, gasped. This is older than I expected. These carvings predate the New Kingdom. This may have been a site of great significance, possibly even a ritual ground. Marcus pulled out a shovel. Well, let's get to work. They set about clearing sand, revealing fragments of walls, broken reliefs, and inscriptions worn by time. Then, Elena called out. Amelia! Over here. She had uncovered a hidden shaft, its entrance blocked by a massive stone slab, nearly imperceptible beneath the layers of sand. The carvings on its surface sent a shiver down Amelia's spine. It was the same inscription from the amulet. Here rests Amenhotep, ruler of the forgotten, he who walks between worlds. Silence hung in the air. The wind itself seemed to still. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow. Well. We found it. Now what? Amelia's hands trembled as she reached for the amulet. If the legends were true, they weren't just standing on a lost pharaoh's tomb. They were standing at the doorway of something far greater, something waiting to be awakened. Chapter 3, The Sealed Passage. The sun hung low over the vast Egyptian desert, casting long shadows over the scattered ruins. The discovery of the hidden shaft sent a ripple of anticipation through the team. The weight of history, of something ancient and untouched for millennia, settled over them like the oppressive desert heat. Amelia knelt before the massive stone slab covering the entrance to what they believed to be Amenhotep's lost tomb. The intricate carvings on its surface had eroded over time, but the symbols were still clear enough to read. The pharaoh who walks beyond time shall rise only when the stars align and the chosen bearer unlocks the way. She turned to Dr. Hassan, whose expression was one of awe and caution. This isn't just a tomb, she murmured. It's a prison. Marcus exhaled, gripping his canteen. Great. That makes me feel so much better about opening it. Elena dusted off the remaining sand, her eyes flickering to the eye of our amulet in Amelia's hands. What if this amulet is what's meant to unlock the way? Amelia's fingers tightened around the relic. The idea sent a chill down her spine. If that was true, then Amenhotep's slumber had not been accidental, he had been placed here deliberately, and the amulet was the key to his awakening. Are we really sure we want to do this? Dr. Hassan asked cautiously. A long silence followed. Then, Amelia took a deep breath. We didn't come all this way to turn back now. Marcus cracked his knuckles. All right, let's get to work. The team set up their equipment, preparing to move the stone slab. Using a combination of leverage, pulleys, and sheer determination, they slowly forced the massive stone to budge. The ancient mechanism resisted at first, as if the tomb itself was reluctant to be disturbed. Then, with a grinding groan, the slab shifted, revealing a dark void beneath. A gust of cold air rushed from the opening, sending an unnatural chill through the group. The desert heat was instantly forgotten. Marcus took a step back. That's not normal. Elena shivered. It's like the air down there has been trapped for thousands of years. Amelia held her breath. She could feel it, something beneath them, something ancient waiting. She clicked on her flashlight and aimed it downward, revealing a narrow stone staircase disappearing into pitch-black darkness. Dr. Hassan crossed his arms, uneasy. If we enter, there may be no going back. Amelia met his gaze. Then we tread carefully. One by one, they made their way down, their footsteps echoing against the ancient stone walls. The air was thick with the scent of age-old dust and something faintly metallic, like dried blood. Hieroglyphs lined the passage, their meanings ominous. He is not dead. He waits. Beware the wrath of the undying king. Marcus muttered under his breath, I hate when walls give me death threats. The deeper they descended, the heavier the air became. The only sound was their breath and the faint rustling of unseen movement deep within the tunnel. Then, suddenly, a whisper. Amelia halted, her heart hammering. Did anyone else hear that? Elena nodded, swallowing hard. It sounded like chanting. Dr. Hassan turned pale. There were legends of priests who remained behind to guard the pharaoh's tomb. Could they? He didn't finish. They all knew what he was thinking. Could the priests still be here? Or worse, could something else be waiting for them? At last, they reached the bottom of the passage. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, its walls decorated with murals depicting a pharaoh surrounded by figures in ritualistic robes. At the center of the chamber stood a massive stone door, adorned with gold inlays and inscriptions. The Eye of Ra was carved in its center, the same design as the amulet in Amelia's hand. This is it, she whispered. The final seal. Elena ran her fingers over the carvings. It's a warning. It says that those who open this door must be prepared to face what lies beyond. Marcus sighed. Of course, it does. Amelia felt a strange pull toward the door. The amulet grew warm in her grip. She took a deep breath and pressed the Eye of Ra amulet into the carved indentation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the chamber shuddered. Dust rained from the ceiling. The door began to move, grinding against stone as the centuries-old seal was broken. A deep, resonant hum filled the air. And from the other side of the door, something stirred. Something ancient. Something awakening. Chapter 4, The Pharaoh's Tomb. The ancient stone door groaned as it slid open, revealing a yawning darkness beyond. A rush of stale, icy air swept over the team, carrying with it the weight of time and forgotten whispers. Dust swirled in the dim light of their torches, revealing a passage carved with intricate hieroglyphs, telling a story that had not been seen by human eyes in thousands of years. Amelia stepped forward, her heart pounding. We're the first people to enter this tomb in centuries. Elena swallowed. If the legends are true, we may not be alone. Marcus let out a shaky breath. I was really hoping that part was an exaggeration. Dr. Hassan traced his fingers over the carvings. This is no ordinary burial chamber. Look, these glyphs don't depict a funeral. They describe a ritual, a preservation. Amenhotep was not buried, he was placed here for something greater. Amelia's torch illuminated the corridor ahead, its walls lined with towering statues of Anubis, their jackal heads glaring down at them, as if silently judging their presence. She felt a strange pull toward the chamber beyond, as though the tomb itself recognized her arrival. As they moved deeper into the tomb, they emerged into a massive chamber, unlike anything they had ever seen. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, adorned with golden constellations, mirroring the night sky. The walls gleamed with elaborate carvings of Amenhotep, not just as a pharaoh but as a god among men, depicted standing between the worlds of the living and the dead. At the center of the room, atop a raised stone platform, lay an ornate black sarcophagus, covered in shimmering golden inlays and arcane symbols. A heavy silence settled over the team. The air was thick with an ancient energy, pressing against their skin like unseen hands. Dr. Hassan murmured, This is not a tomb. It's a chamber of awakening. Elena's voice wavered. We shouldn't be here. Amelia's grip on the eye of Ra amulet tightened. Every instinct screamed that something was watching them. Marcus stepped closer to the sarcophagus, running his fingers over the hieroglyphic warnings. What does it say? Dr. Hassan translated slowly, his voice barely a whisper. Let he who dares disturb the slumber of the undying king be bound to his fate. He shall awaken when the stars call his name, and the world shall tremble before him. A shiver ran through Amelia's spine. This is why he was erased from history. They weren't just hiding a pharaoh. They were hiding a power beyond comprehension. Marcus exhaled. So, what now? Do we leave and pretend we never saw this? Elena nodded rapidly. Yes. That. Exactly that. But Amelia wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked on an altar beside the sarcophagus, where a second amulet, identical to the one she carried, rested in the hands of a stone effigy. Without thinking, she reached out and touched it. The instant her fingers brushed the ancient amulet, the room shook violently. A deep rumbling echoed through the chamber, and the torches lining the walls flickered wildly, casting frantic shadows. The statues of Anubis seemed to move, their carved eyes gleaming in the dim light. Marcus cursed. Amelia, what did you do? A low, inhuman sound rumbled through the chamber, a breath. The lid of the sarcophagus trembled. Elena grabbed Amelia's arm. We need to get out of here. Now. The inscriptions on the walls glowed faintly, their golden light spreading like veins of liquid fire. Dr. Hassan gasped. He's waking up. The sarcophagus shuddered, and then, with an ear-splitting crack, the heavy stone lid slid open. From within, a hand wrapped in ancient linen slowly rose from the depths of the tomb. Amelia felt her pulse stop. This was impossible. No body should be preserved like this. And yet, he was still here. A voice, low, ancient, and filled with power, echoed through the chamber, though no lips moved. Who calls me from the depths? The figure sat up, his form larger than life, his presence overwhelming. He wore golden ceremonial armor, his skin eerily untouched by time. His eyes, burning with an unnatural golden glow, locked onto Amelia. Pharaoh Amenhotep had awakened. Chapter 5, The Pharaoh Walks Again. The chamber trembled with the weight of something beyond time itself. Pharaoh Amenhotep, the legend, the myth, had risen. His eyes, glowing like molten gold, bore into Amelia's soul as though seeing into the very essence of her being. The ancient linen that wrapped his body was barely frayed by time, his golden ceremonial armor gleaming beneath the dust of centuries. He was not dead. He had never been dead. Marcus took a shaky step back, hand instinctively reaching for his pistol. Nope. Nope, nope, nope. This isn't happening. Elena's breath came in rapid gasps. This is impossible. Dr. Hassan clutched his chest as if struggling to breathe. The texts were true, the pharaoh who walks between worlds. Amenhotep moved. It was not the sluggish, stilted movement of a corpse, nor the unnatural shuffle of a reanimated being. It was the graceful, commanding stride of a king, a ruler who had never stopped ruling, even in death. His presence filled the air with an unseen force, a weight that pressed against their bodies, making it hard to think, to move, to breathe. His voice came again, deep and resonant, as though pulled from the very stones around them. Who dares disturb the slumber of Pharaoh Amenhotep? Amelia fought against the overwhelming instinct to kneel before him. Every part of her mind screamed that this was wrong, unnatural, but her heart whispered otherwise. This was history alive before her very eyes. She took a step forward, barely aware that she was moving. We are explorers. Seekers of knowledge. My name is Amelia Carter. Amenhotep's gaze flickered to the eye of Ra amulet clutched in her trembling hands. Recognition. The key, he murmured, taking another step closer. Amelia swallowed hard. This was found in your tomb. It led us here. A flicker of amusement crossed his face. It was always meant to. A shudder ran through Amelia. He knew. Elena took a careful step forward, voice barely above a whisper. You were buried alive, weren't you? Amenhotep turned his piercing gaze to her, eyes narrowing slightly. No. I was placed in slumber. Until the time of my return. Marcus found his voice again. Okay, I've seen a lot of crazy things, but you're telling me you were just taking a long nap? For, what? 3,000 years. A slow, knowing smile spread across the pharaoh's lips. Time does not hold dominion over me as it does you. Dr. Hassan gasped, understanding dawning in his expression. It's not just a tomb. It was a preservation chamber. A place meant to keep him, suspended in time. Amelia's fingers curled around the amulet. Then why wake up now? For the first time, Amenhotep hesitated. Then, in the darkness, something stirred. A new presence filled the chamber. It was not alive, but neither was it dead. The very shadows in the room twisted and thickened, as if responding to some unseen force. Amenhotep's expression darkened. Because my slumber has ended. A chill ran down Amelia's spine. What does that mean? The walls shuddered violently, dust cascading from the carved ceiling. A deep, guttural growl echoed through the tomb, ancient and filled with malice. Dr. Hassan gasped. Something is coming. Amenhotep turned toward the darkness beyond the sarcophagus. His golden eyes burned brighter as he raised his hands, palms open, as if feeling the air itself. Then, he spoke one word. Apep. The very name sent a jolt through the chamber. The hieroglyphs on the walls flared to life, burning with golden fire as if reacting to an ancient force. Elena's breath caught. Apep? As in, the serpent god. The bringer of chaos? Amenhotep's gaze flickered toward her. You know the name. But do you know its power? The shadows deepened, something unfurling from the darkness at the edges of the chamber. The air grew heavier, colder, as an overwhelming sense of wrongness filled the room. Amelia clenched her fists. What is this? Amenhotep turned to her, his face set with grim certainty. The curse that bound me was not my own. Something was sealed away with me. A sound like hissing breath filled the chamber. The shadows moved. Marcus stepped back. Nope. I don't like this. Nope. A low, inhuman voice slithered through the air. You should not have come. The room plunged into chaos. The statues of Anubis lining the chamber came to life, their stone bodies cracking and shifting, their eyes flaring with an unnatural glow. A swirling mass of darkness and sand began to coalesce at the far end of the chamber, taking the shape of something huge, serpentine, and ancient. Amenhotep stood his ground. His voice, filled with power, boomed through the chamber. The age of shadows is over. I have returned. The darkness roared. Amelia grabbed Marcus and Elena. Run! The tomb collapsed into chaos, dust and debris filling the air as they raced toward the exit. Behind them, the ancient battle between light and shadow had begun once more. And the world would never be the same. Chapter 6, Wrath of the Serpent. The chamber shook violently, the golden inscriptions on the walls glowing brighter, as the ancient entity of darkness, Apep, began to take form. The writhing, shadowy mass twisted into something enormous, a serpentine figure whose very presence warped the air around it. Amelia's lungs felt like they were filling with smoke, even though no fire was present. The presence of pure, malevolent energy in the room was suffocating. Amenhotep's golden eyes burned brighter, his body rigid with the power coursing through him. He extended a commanding hand toward the growing darkness, his voice resonating like thunder rolling through the tomb. The chaos of Apep shall not reign again. I, Pharaoh Amenhotep, decree it. The shadows hissed, the deep growl of the forming entity resonating through the cavernous chamber. Elena gripped Amelia's arm, her voice shaking. We need to go. Now. Marcus had already begun pulling her toward the exit, but Amelia's gaze was locked on Amenhotep. He stood there, unshaken, facing the monstrous force of darkness that had been sealed away with him for millennia. Dr. Hassan muttered in disbelief, this is beyond anything ever recorded, beyond history itself. Then, the serpent struck. The mass of shadows lunged toward Amenhotep, its form shifting and snapping like a living nightmare. The pharaoh lifted his hands, and from his golden armor, a radiant shield of energy erupted, blinding in its brilliance. The force of the impact sent shockwaves through the room, knocking Amelia and her team to the ground. Sand and stone rained down from the ceiling, the tomb itself straining under the battle of two ancient forces. Amenhotep pushed forward, chanting in a forgotten tongue, his power burning through the darkness like the midday sun. The serpent screeched in agony, recoiling as the light of Ra tore through its form. But Apep did not retreat. Instead, the dark entity shifted its attention, toward the ones who had set this event into motion. Its glowing, inhuman eyes landed on Amelia. A guttural voice, thick with ancient hatred, spoke directly into her mind. The key has been turned. The balance is broken. You have doomed the world. Amelia gasped, her head throbbing as the words echoed through her very bones. Marcus grabbed her, shouting something, but she couldn't hear him. The voice of Apep was all she could hear, all she could feel. And then. The serpent lashed out. A stream of pure darkness shot toward them, a violent force of ancient malice. Amelia braced herself for the impact. But it never came. Amenhotep threw himself in front of them, raising both hands. A golden barrier erupted, intercepting the attack and shattering the incoming darkness. The pharaoh staggered slightly, his breath sharp, but his eyes burned with fury. I am not bound by your will, serpent. Amenhotep bellowed. The cycle shall not begin anew. Apep roared in frustration, its massive form twisting, shifting, retreating deeper into the shadows. But even as it pulled back, it left behind a lingering presence, a promise of return. The tomb continued to crumble, ancient supports giving way to the chaos. Amenhotep turned to Amelia, urgency in his golden eyes. The balance has shifted, and now Apep stirs. He will not be contained forever. Amelia swallowed, still reeling. What can we do? He stared at her for a long moment before speaking. I must leave this place. And you must guide me in this new world. Marcus coughed in disbelief. Wait. You want to come with us? Amenhotep straightened, the divine glow around him still pulsing faintly. I was never meant to remain buried. My time is now. The temple groaned, the ceiling beginning to collapse in earnest. Dr. Hassan shouted, we have to go. Now. Amenhotep extended his hand. Take my hand, Amelia Carter. And I shall show you the world as it was, and as it will be. For a brief second, Amelia hesitated. The weight of history, of everything she knew, everything she believed pressed against her mind. Then, she took his hand. A surge of power, warmth, and something utterly unexplainable rushed through her as the pharaoh's touch connected with hers. And as the tomb collapsed behind them, the world of the past and present merged in a way it never had before. Amenhotep had returned. And the world would never be the same again. Chapter 7, A Pharaoh in the Modern World. The wind howled across the dunes as the team emerged from the ruins, the final remnants of the ancient tomb collapsing behind them in a deafening cascade of stone and dust. The golden dawn painted the desert in hues of fire and shadow, illuminating the impossible reality that had just unfolded. Amenhotep stood at the crest of the sand, his golden armor gleaming, his features unreadable as he took in the vast, open world before him. His eyes, once accustomed to the grandeur of palaces and temples, now drank in a world that had long since moved beyond him. Amelia watched him carefully, her heart still pounding from their harrowing escape. Her mind raced with questions: how had he survived? What did his presence mean? What would happen next? Marcus broke the silence. So, we're just going to pretend this is normal? He gestured toward the resurrected pharaoh now standing among them. Because this is very much not normal. Dr. Hassan wiped sweat from his forehead, shaking his head. This defies everything we know about ancient history. About science. About life and death itself. Amenhotep turned, his piercing golden gaze falling on Amelia. The world has changed. His voice was steady, regal, but tinged with something else, curiosity, perhaps even sorrow. Amelia took a breath. Yes. It has. A lot. She gestured toward the modern equipment, the satellite phone blinking in Marcus's hand, the headlights of their off-road vehicle gleaming in the morning sun. Machines, objects, things beyond his time. Elena muttered under her breath, "This is going to be one hell of an adjustment." The journey back to Cairo was long, filled with a tense, eerie silence. Amenhotep sat in the passenger seat of the vehicle, his golden adornments reflecting the rising sun, his expression impassive but watchful. Every turn of the wheels, every sound of the engine, every glimpse of modern civilization was a revelation and a reminder: he was no longer in his own time. Amelia, from the driver's seat, glanced at him. This must be overwhelming. Amenhotep's eyes flickered toward the endless stretch of road, the speed of the car unlike anything he had ever experienced. Overwhelming, no. He paused. Unexpected? Yes. Marcus, from the back seat, huffed. Great, so he's cool with time travel. Elena, sitting beside him, shot him a glare. This isn't time travel, Marcus. This is something else entirely. Dr. Hassan, deep in thought, murmured, "What matters now is what he remembers." Pharaoh, do you recall the ritual that placed you in slumber? Amenhotep's jaw tightened. I remember, the priests. The night sky. The voices. His golden eyes darkened. And I remember the warning. A chill ran through Amelia. The warning. Amenhotep turned his gaze to her, his next words solemn and absolute. If I rise, then so too shall the darkness. A heavy silence fell over the group. Outside, the desert landscape stretched on, vast and unyielding. When they finally reached Cairo, the city sprawled before them in all its chaotic beauty. The towering skyline, the bustling streets, the neon signs flickering in the distance, a world of light and sound that had never existed in Amenhotep's time. For the first time, his mask of control faltered. His hands tightened against the dashboard, his breathing slowed. Amelia noticed. Hey. Are you okay? He didn't answer right away. Instead, his gaze swept across the city, absorbing thousands of years of progress in mere moments. Finally, he exhaled. I imagined the future. But not like this. Marcus leaned forward. Well, Pharaoh, welcome to the 21st century. Amenhotep looked at him, his lips curling slightly, perhaps in amusement, perhaps in acknowledgement. It is vast. Elena smiled. That's one way to put it. As they pulled into the Cairo Museum, Amelia turned to the group. Okay. We need a plan. We can't just walk in with an actual resurrected pharaoh and expect no one to notice. Dr. Hassan frowned. The director will have questions. So will the authorities. Amenhotep straightened. Then we tell them the truth. Marcus groaned. Yeah, because, hey, we woke up an immortal pharaoh is really going to go over well. Elena rubbed her temples. We need to be careful. If the world finds out who he is, what he is, there's no telling what kind of chaos it could cause. Amelia looked at Amenhotep. You're a living piece of history. But more than that, you might be the only one who understands what's coming. Amenhotep met her gaze. Apep is stirring. And I fear the world is unprepared. A cold shiver ran through Amelia. They had awakened more than just a pharaoh. They had awakened the battle between light and darkness itself.
Every story has an ending. But some mysteries live on. If you enjoyed this tale, don't let it fade into the shadows. Smash that like button and subscribe for more thrilling stories that will transport you beyond the veil of the ordinary. Subscribe to our channel and your name will appear at the beginning of our next video, where we will pleasantly thank you for your subscribing. Tap the bell icon so you never miss a journey into the unknown. Share your thoughts in the comments. What twists did you see coming? And what secrets do you think still remain? Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and let the next story begin.